stars, and that's who we are. We are voices. There's nothing to fear. Explode in your rear. Feel our voices.
Chitty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang.
That's how you start the show.
Damn, man.
Good effort.
We're
Good
smoking
try.
up.
Smoke it if you got it.
Smoking if you got 'em.
That's why you can't see all of us, because we're passing it.
That's it.
That's right.
That would be
I'll
awesome.
pass.
It'd be neat if we had the ability, pardon me, to do the show and have like a hand kind of come in from the side, like, and then hand it over to Ed, and then Ed.
Yep. And that's my turn. Oh, thanks.
We got to figure that out. We'll need 3 more people.
We'll work it out. Can we do this? It's like one of those like.
Yeah.
Well, shoot. Welcome back, everybody. It's Wednesday here in our future, our present.
We're like Robocop. We're predicting the future.
2016.
Yeah, this is Ed.
This is Mike.
And this is coughing.
I've got the flu. You guys chill for a minute, talk, and I'll be right back.
All right, yeah. Take care of your business. Mike's back. All right.
And through the magic of television, we're back.
I don't have any magic sound effects.
Ooh.
All I have is
Yes.
That's good enough.
good enough.
Ancient Chinese magic.
Sounds good. Yes, we're back, and it's all about Robocop.
Robocop.
Now, here's the thing about Robocop is it's definitely a product of its time.
Yes.
Some movies you can definitely tell, even if they do hold up, it's a product of a very specific time, and I think Robocop is definitely one of those movies because it fully embodies the cynicism and the class warfare of the 80s.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely. And it's not that it's necessarily dated. I know a lot of self-proclaimed movie aficionados, or the people that are really hung up on effects. Mm-hmm. Oh, you could totally tell it was stop motion. Like, well, yeah, but if the story's good, does it matter? You know, that's my argument. But yeah, there was the cynicism. There was. Everybody was upset about the money people in the 80s, the yuppies. It was the age of the yuppie.
Right.
So now you've got Detroit, which was bad in the 80s, the haves and have-nots. They're the have-nots. And then Detroit is being bought and sold by this yuppie corporation. Like, the ultimate bad guy is just business dudes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very telling because there's that one point where the Ed 209 malfunctions and kills the guy at the board meeting.
Yeah.
And, like, the first thing out of their mouths is like, "This is terrible. We have a deadline. What's going to happen?" You know, it's like no one cares that this guy just got blown to shreds. You know, It's like he's just in pieces on this table. You know, like, no one cares about that. Everyone cares about the deadline and getting the product launched and everything like that. You know, it's like, and that was and even I think it's very telling even for today. But like that was the 80s, like that. You know, like guys in business suits that like looked at everyone as a number and didn't really care as long as they got their cocaine. You know.
Yeah, that's totally how it felt. You know. That human life really wasn't worth anything. You had, like, you know, all these like scandals coming out. These all the way up the food chain, corporate scandals. You had Iran-Contra thing going on, and just, you know, military action that was clearly tied to financial investments, things like that. So this very different from. It feels different from like the '60s. Conflicts where, you know, you just can't trust your government because they're lying to you. But now you're like, we're getting sold out. It's very clear we're getting sold out and nobody gives a shit.
And the idealism of the 60s is completely gone by this point.
Well, did you guys, looking back, and I have a fondness, I mean, obviously I'm, you know, at my age, I have a fondness for the 80s. However, there was a naive thing that, looking back, I noticed. Back when I was a kid, it seemed right. It just seemed to be what it was. But there was this naive kind of notion of like what the end of the world was like, or what the future was like, and people would jump in unafraid. They would come in with a statement. This is my picture of the future, and this time it's going to be a dark and gritty version of it. And it wasn't just dark and gritty; it was vulgar, because they didn't have anything against which to compare. In terms of an ugly idea of the future. So they were like, let's just not do that that Epcot version. Let's do something gritty and toothy that's going to like take this in a different direction. And they went like balls out. And I remember, like I said on our break, I walked away as a kid from Robocop feeling the way I felt walking away from Toxic Avenger, which was another one of those. and Trauma,
Interesting comparison.
I'm not going to criticize Trauma at all because I'm parked next to them at MegaCon almost all the time. So and those people will fight you. But truthfully, like, Trauma goes into everything with this like, I don't care attitude, let's offend attitude, but there is generally there's usually an idea there. That's the 80s. That's why I think Blade Runner was as effective as it was. And it left such a feeling. It left that wet, dank, moist metal feeling when you walk away. It was pretty, but it wasn't. It was pretty, but you don't want to revisit.
Yeah,
like, let's not
there was
go
a lot
there.
of a bravery in these movies that were being made. I don't know how. To us when we were kids, they just happened and we loved them. But now, looking back, it's like, how did this happen? How was it allowed?
Right.
When the only way you could pull that off now is if it's a remake, or even Elysium is like the most recent thing that's comparable in my mind. Everything else is just really sterile. In the end, even if it looks disparate, the story is just so LCD and base and predictable. There's no challenge there. People are still talking about Blade Runner. It's satisfying, yet you still have to put the conclusions, make your own conclusions all these years out. Where now it's like, oh yeah, it looked great, but
Right. There's a balance. There's such a charmed balance now with everything. Like, everyone knows. Oh, of course. It's like being a hipster, Okay, I can do the mustache, if that's even hip anymore. I can do the mustache, but I can't do shaggy hair. I've got to go get a high and tight. Oh, but I'm gonna have to balance that out with some tattoos because I'm wearing tight shorts. Because you know what I mean?
Formula.
There's a formula. So the formula has been so established that now I feel as though we've broken away from a formula. And so we're just clinging to the last one we had. Yeah. And so I have yet, honestly, the truth be told, recently, the thing that's given me that oily feeling in my throat, I don't watch the show, I watch it every now and again, and then I'll catch up, is Walking Dead. There's one moment where I had that 8 to 10-year-old feeling. It was in first or second season when they pulled the zombie from the watery pit, and they got him over the edge, and they broke in half.
Right.
And I remember I was eating, and I was like, "That's so foul! I can't eat now." But I remember as a kid, I couldn't watch almost anything. And I want to keep it on RoboCop. But remember, Time Bandits?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Time Bandits was foul. That was nasty, oily, dirty, gritty. It was someone's idea of a pit. And it was just so guttural and just there. RoboCop originally had that.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that the new one would.
And it really doesn't. I think that actually the comparison to Toxic Avenger is a really good one because,
Thanks.
You have that very graphic, gory violence.
Yeah.
And then you have a guy that's made into something quote unquote better because of this horrific thing that happens to him, but he's permanently scarred. There's actually a lot of parallels between the two stories. That's actually, like, I never put it together, but that actually really works really well. And I mean, and then there's even at the end when one of the bad guys gets toxic waste poured on him, he pretty much turns into Toxie, and then he gets hit by a car and explodes. You know? There's a lot of trauma going on there. That's I could definitely see it. But and actually going back to like the movies that they make, I think a big problem is you had a lot of these smaller independent production companies like Orion Pictures, you know, like who actually made the original RoboCop, and they weren't an MGM, they weren't a Universal or Paramount, so they had to make these edgier, more interesting movies, you know. And like if you look at like some of the people in some of the movies that came out under Orion, they're things that kind of push, or like they make something, or they make a statement, you know. Like I just have it pulled up here, but like Amadeus, Platoon, Dances with Wolves, Silence of the Lambs, you know. It's like,
and they're not exactly art house films, but they're not B movies.
Yeah,
I mean, they're very memorable, but they're not like Universal and blah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's like they're not all movies with happy endings. They're not all movies that have like a formulaic story, you know. So and I think the fact that like a lot of these smaller production companies aren't out there anymore, I think we just kind of lost that voice. And I think that's kind of what caused it all. I don't know. I mean, I'm not caused it, but I mean, I'm sure that's a contributing factor. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened in the 90s where, like, did it just get so inflated, like with action films, and maybe it's because, like what Mike was saying, the formula started to take shape, and once it was on paper, you know, like I just watched every Lethal Weapon. And, you know, at the time, there wasn't that formula. Now we look back at it, and you can laugh at the formula. At the time, we absolutely ate it up and couldn't wait for more. But, you know, going through the 90s, you just had this... Everything had to be one-up. Everything had to be bigger and better and bigger and more explosions and more action and more violence and more death. Yeah. And the last Lethal Weapon, fun as it is, it's been a while since I've seen it.
It's pretty garbage.
It is so violent. It's crazy. There's just people like firing rockets into crowds of people. I'm like, what the hell is this? And that's just that was what was expected. That's what they assumed audiences demanded, and I think that's why stories went to the wayside in favor of big and Armageddon and bigger.
And even RoboCop falls into that because, you know, like they had RoboCop 1 and then they made RoboCop 2, which we can talk about tomorrow.
Rock on. What a beautiful segue.
In VOR 2. Actually 3.
Talking about RoboCop 2 in VOR 3.
In 3. And now I will go number 1. So until tomorrow, this is Ed saying, may the Force
be with
badass.
Rock on, people.